Hey guys, you're welcome back once again to Elvila Couture YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be on how to make an A-line dress with shoulder ruffle and a bell sleeve. So right now I have my pattern paper here. I've already gone ahead to label it now. So right now I'm placing the shoulder measurement. I'm marking the half of the shoulder measurement, which is 8 inches. Then I'll come down from the 8 inches, I'll come down by 1 inch. This is for the shoulder slope. Then now for the neck width, I'm marking 3 inches. Then for the depth, for the back depth, I mark 1 inch. The front, I mark 3 inches. Right now, I'm connecting the marks from the width to the depth. So I'm also doing same thing for the front now. So that's my back and that's my front neckline. Next thing now is to draw out my line to the neckline, my shoulder rather. Now I'm placing half of the armhole measurements. Then I'll rule that out as well. I'll be imputing my shoulder measurement on that armhole line. So I'll rule that out into a straight line. So that is my chest line or my armhole line. I'm connecting the mark together. Next thing now is to measure that straight line to get the midpoint. I'll come in from the midpoint by half of an inch. So I'll rule that out with a straight ruler. Then I'll use my French curve. Okay, right now I'm marking the quarter of my bust measurement. So this is a free dress. I'm going to be adding 1 inch to quarter of the bust measurement. So from there now, I'll be connecting it now to the armhole line. So that is my front armhole line over there. The next thing now is to mark that shoulder line, to measure that shoulder line and mark the midpoint. So that's the midpoint over there. So I'll just rule it straight down to the chest line. So I'm done with that now. I'll just curve out that end to eliminate that sharpness at the end there. So I'm still curving it out. You can use your free hand to curve it out also. So the next thing now, on the hem of the dress, I'll be imputing quarter of the hip measurement. Then I'll be adding 6 inches to that measurement. Now I'll be connecting now from that 6 inches extension to the chest line quarter of the bust measurement. So I'm drawing up my line now from the chest line to the hem of the dress. Then I'll rule that out also. Once I'm done with that now, I'll just be cutting out the pattern. So guys, thank you so much to my subscribers. And if you're new here, kindly hit on the subscribe button to see more videos. Right now, I'm ruling out my back armhole. So I'll still go ahead now to cut this out. Next thing I want to do now is to cut out that shape I drafted earlier on. So that's where the ruffles are going to be attached onto. Now I've placed my pattern paper on the fabric, leaving ½ inch on that side, that way, then 1 inch on the side. As you can see here, my fabric is placed on folded end of the fabric. My pattern rather is placed on the folded end of the fabric. Now I'm cutting the front. I've also trimmed off the back armhole. I'm adding ½ inch on that part, then on the side I'm relieving 1 inch. So I'm just cutting it out now. as ½ inch all the way. Then on the side, I'm using 1 inch. I already added hemming allowance for the length. So this is what I have. Here is my front panel. Now for the cover, for what I cut out, so this, I'm just adding ½ inch all round. This is for the front. I'll place 2 fabrics together, right side facing right side. I'm cutting off the back neckline, leaving only the front. On that part, I'll be leaving 1.5 inches. Then on that side, I'll be keeping ½ inch round. So I'm going to be cutting out 2 pieces of that. So right now, that's the right side and that's the right side, front panel to back panel. Next thing now is to sew it up on the shoulder on ½ inch on both sides. When I'm done sewing, the next thing now is to measure from that shoulder point all round to that shoulder point again. Whatever that gives me, I'll just multiply it by 2 or by 3, depending on the amount of fabric you have. So I'm done closing up the shoulder now. I also went ahead to cut out the ruffles. That's 5 inches for the length of the ruffle. So I'll be making a gather stitch at that end. I'm making a gather stitch there to the end. Then I'll be attaching it on that neckline. I'm done with making my ruffle stitches. I've gathered it. Now that's the midpoint. That's the right side. The wrong side is facing the right side of the dress. Now I'll be pinning it on the midpoint of the front, the back panel rather. I'll be sewing that now on ½ inch. Just use my pin now to keep it down in place. I'm done with attaching it now. That's the back panel. Next thing now, that's the shoulder seam. Next thing now is to place that front I cut out. That's the midpoint. I'll just notch it there, and that is the center point of the back. So I'll just place them right side facing right side, making sure the notches aligns. Then now I'll pin them together now. I'll take it to the machine. I'll be sewing them up now on ½ inch. Now here is the shoulder of the dress, the shoulder seam of the dress, the front and the back. I'll just make sure that what I cut out matches up with the shoulder. So now I'm placing them together now. I'm done now with sewing it now. I've attached that cut out to the ruffles and down onto the dress. So here is the front. Now I gave 1.5 inches for button allowance. So here is how to fold it, ½ inch in, then I folded it again by 1 inch. I'll be sewing that up now as well. I'm done with sewing the both of them now. Now on the right side, that's where I'll be making a buttonhole. I'm be placing the left hand side underneath the right hand side. Then I'll be closing it on that part. So this is what it should look like once you're done. I've also gone ahead to open up my buttonhole to make a buttonhole stitches rather. Now I'll be attaching that front part now to the down part of the dress. First of all, I'm attaching it now from the shoulder. Pin that out as well. After attaching it on the shoulder, then I will now attach it round the front pattern. That's the shoulder, also the other shoulder. Once I'm done with pinning it now, take it to the sewing machine now and sew it up from the shoulder point. Sew it up now on ½ inch from one shoulder to the other shoulder. Right now I'm done with attaching. What I'm doing now is to measure up my neckline, the front and the back neckline. So whatever that gives me, just add 1 inch to it. Now I fold my fabric into 2 and now into 4 again. Taking the half of my neckline measurement, I added 1 inch. Now I want my collar to be 1 inches when I'm done sewing, but I'm marking 1.5 inches. I'll be using ½ inch to sew it onto the dress. I'm through with cutting. So what you do now is to close up both ends on ½ inch. I'm done with closing up both ends now. What I will do now is to pin it on the neckline and sew it all round from one side of the neckline to the other side of the open front of the neckline. I'm done with sewing it now. I will turn on the other side of the band in and sew it also on 1/4 of an inch. As you can see. So now here is my collar. I've also attached my cover buttons. Now for the upper part of the sleeve, just measure up the armhole of the dress. I fold my fabric now into 2. Then I'm placing half of the armhole over there. So I'll just mark that out. Just confirming the measurement I marked out. Next thing now, I'm taking the length of the upper sleeve plus my joining allowance. Now I'm taking the round sleeve, which is 6.5. I'll mark it there now as well. I'll roll out my lines, connect them now together. So I'll be adding 1 inch over there for the side seam allowance. Then I'll be adding ½ inch up there for joining with the dress. Now I'll be cutting this out also. I've cut out 2 pieces for the upper sleeve. Now for the flare, measure down the round sleeve, the sleeve opening, and I fold another fabric into 4. I fold again into 4 now. So I divided that down part by 6.28. Now I'm placing the radius on that folded end. So from that radius line, I'll be taking the length of the flare, including my hemming allowance. Now I'm cutting out the length first, then I'll cut out the radius, then I'll open it up on one side of the flare. So now there is my flare, attaching it onto the upper sleeve, right side facing right side. I'll be sewing that up on ½ of an inch. So now there is what I have after joining it. So you can decide to weave it, or you hem it, or you use a bias strip to turn it in. I mark the midpoint of the sleeve now. I will be attaching it on the shoulder seam. Then after attaching it, after pinning it down there, then I'll be sewing it up now on ½ of an inch from that part onto this other part. Close them up now by ½ of an inch. So I'm done with joining up my sleeves to my dress. Now I'm turning out the wrong side, and I'll be closing the sleeve now on 1 inch from there onto the dress. I'll be sewing it on 1 inch because that is the allowance I gave. I will do same thing on the other side as well. So to hem the dress, I will just fold it in ½ inch in and ½ inch in again and sew it all around. Thank you guys for watching. See you again on my next video.